My mum was a gardener. She dug, and she dug everything around her ankles inside her Korako section for 30 years. She was a gardener with a passion. People from all over the township knew that her garden always had flowers blooming throughout the year. She grew her own food. She used the garden as a means of expressing herself to the world, and the joy that she got back was unlimited. This is a story about her and her garden. Through Mum's influence, I began in my later years to appreciate gardens of all varieties. So doing, visited many gardens throughout the country. I have been invited to join in many surveys in different parts of the country, or I have gone to visit a variety of plants or plant groupings of my personal interest. Having achieved what I set out to do with the food grown at our place, I was able to transplant excess into these gardens that were left to overgrow at another site along the lake edge. I thought this would be an opportunity to produce foodstuffs of sorts to start with, so that the produce coming from these planter boxes can be shared with family and tribal members of my iwi. On completion of that, I looked into the area below the hill and had seen opportunity to increase perhaps the garden size of food produce, but possibly with a plan to produce maybe a garden of beauty in due course. However, this would require an exceptional amount of human endeavour to achieve a reasonably good look through the excessively long grass that lay ahead of me on the task I had set. Now on the lower land, and the comparison between the before photos and this after video, this clip can show the amount of progress that has been undertaken in the last 2 to 3 months. This work is slow and progressive with no time limits attached. I would endeavour, however, to try to make the garden bed prepared before the start of the spring period. I at least at this point have the best of 2 months to scratch the rest of the earth and remove the overgrown before being able to condition and plant in the ground. From this view, I have tried to work in a series of infinity points adjacent to the view across the lake. The idea of infinity views is to enable for someone inside the garden to have a sense of wide open space, unlike the claustrophobic sense one gets when they are surrounded by long overgrown. This pathway is an access way onto the track that runs around the perimeter of the lake. The perimeter of the lake is privately owned land, and this pathway leads directly onto it. At this point of the end of the pathway, we have turned towards the main building on site, and we are now looking directly up towards a ramp that had been scratched completely out, and now there is just little bits of maintenance work required to keep the grass down. In this part of the lower garden, drainage has been pressed into the ground in order to retain water that would otherwise wash across the surface and directly into the lake. This next part of the garden shows a second infinity view going north to south and vice versa. These stacks of grass will be broken into pathways along the infinity view to break the site up into series of rooms in which the participant can enjoy separate divisions of the garden space. This room, in my mind, will serve a multi-purpose function. It will have a small whare built into the hay bale where a person can have mirimiri conducted, or karakia, or any form of rongoa and healing methodologies unique to our culture. Along the back wall will be an alcove of sorts where people can sit comfortably in a sheltered open space and view across the gardens in peace. This next section is a view of a second ramp that lines the border of the property and skirts around the corner along the fence line, which marks the boundary between the house with the property and the gardens up on the top landing and the Horowhenua Lake Trust lake property. We have been fortunate enough at this stage of the scratching of the earth to salvage some native plants, and ahead are tikoka, and that's a family of 5. They grow very, very well in communities. We will leave them there. It is odd to see tikoka growing well and isolated in the middle of a paddock. When they are clustered in communities, they thrive. This garden will be a rongoa garden. It will be full of, the aim is to enable it to grow naturally native plants which can be used as poultice or ingested as foodstuffs for better living. This is now the very northern point of the garden, and it lines along a row of harakeke which will mark the boundary point for the native garden. It will run to the fence line that runs back to the property and to the main gardens. This will be a shaded garden space, and it would have hebes and pittosporum type plants grown in the low light of the winter. It does not get a lot of sun during the day. In closing, this garden has been dug with one shovel by one man. Anybody can do this with a bit of time on their hands. In closing, I will leave you with some conceptual ideas that I have drafted together, plus a piece of music that I have recorded myself, and we hope that you enjoy the going out clips to hopefully inspire you to do something similar with your free time. Kia ora koutou katoa. Nō reira, ngā mihi, kia koutou, te me te me te me.